The next thing I want to do is take a look at how we can use this tracking data again. So under our project, we'll go down into our source files and select the movie clip of that helicopter. We'll simply click and drag this into our comp window, where we can see the original helicopter flying around chaotically. What we want to do is use that tracking data for an effect for the brush. Although we'll cover brushes in detail in Chapter 6, it's important to see how using one aspect of the brush and the tracking data can make a very effective cloning tool in After Effects. What I want to do first is start by painting the layer. So again, I'll need to double-click the layer to get into a layer window. Then I'll select the cloner from the paint tools. Just as in Photoshop, I'll need to select Option or Alt on a PC in order to select a source area from which to paint. I'll choose an area right next to the helicopter and click once to define the area. I'll click again, starting with the area that I'm going to track. By clicking and dragging, I can clone out the entire helicopter. But this occurs just for the one layer, and the brushstroke doesn't move. So as I move down the timeline, I can see that the helicopter starts to fly outside of the range of the cloned pixels. Inside of my layer window, I'll change from View Paint to None. This shows just my original helicopter footage. Again, I could come over and stabilize the motion, or I can track the motion. If I do either one, I'll have data that After Effects will generate and show up in a tracker. This time, I'll simply use Track Motion, and because I only want to take the data, and I don't need to use any of the transformation tools, I can leave it as Position or change this to Raw. I'll leave it as Transformation right now because I'll use the Attach tool to attach my brush stroke. I'll change back to the Selection tool using V on the keyboard and move my tracker over to the same area on the rudder of the helicopter. Again, because I have options set to stop tracking if the confidence is below 80, the track motion will obey those same options as were applied for the stabilize motion. I'll click OK, then I'll start to analyze this forward. If the confidence level drops below 80%, the tracking will stop, and I'll have to move the track point. I may want to change my search area to include more pixels and also include more pixels in my feature area as well in order to create a more precise track. Again, I'll move this up to the rudder of my helicopter and continue tracking this forward. I'll do this for every time that the track falls below 80% in order to make sure that the track is accurate. With the last frames completed, I'll move back to frame 0 and open up the parameters for this layer. Now I can see that there's a motion tracker, and within that motion tracker, there is a feature center and also an attach point. The attach point has a value for position X and Y. If I take a look under the effects, I also see that I have a paint effect with a clone brush, and we'll continue to scroll down all the way to find the position of our cloner tool. Here we'll see that we have an anchor point, a position, and a scale and rotation for the cloner brush itself, which isn't for the layer, but for the effect that is living on this layer. We'll hold the Option key down or the Alt key on a PC, then click the stopwatch for position, creating an expression. Then we'll simply drag the pick whip up to the attach point for the track that we've just made. Once After Effects fills in the JavaScript for that expression, we'll use Enter on the number pad to accept it. You won't see it here in the layer window because we've got the view set to motion tracker points. In order to see the paint clone now tracked to our track point, we need to view the brush strokes. So we'll click View and change to Paint. Now we can see that the paint is painting over the helicopter and that the clone is now tracking in position to the tracking point that we've just created. We'll use tilde on the keyboard to expand the timeline to the full screen. If we need to, we can change the diameter of the brush here in order to create a larger brush so that it clones a greater area. I'll use the tilde key again so that we can see, by scrubbing in the timeline, we can see now that the 3-second clip of the helicopter has been cloned out with one brush stroke in the tracking data. Because paint is an effect, and we've just linked paint to the tracking data, you've already created an effect which uses an expression that takes advantage of the tracked motion data. However, there's another way you can do it that's maybe a little more obvious. We'll choose the composition number 3, Effects Tracking, and select the composition window. Here you'll see a composition that has already been set up with a car driving along a country road. Additionally, inside this composition, several layers have been set up with masks and color corrections to change the look of this comp. The car has already been tracked, and rather than applying the tracking data to any specific layer in our composition, this time the tracking data has been applied to a null object. The null contains all of the data, but as we know, it won't show up in our comp. It's a great placeholder for all of our data. Now all we have to do is isolate the layer that has our site target on it, and with the position selected, use Option or Alt on a PC and click on our stopwatch. Now, rather than linking this specifically to tracking data, we're going to link it to our null object, which already has the tracking data applied. We'll use the pick whip to drag down to the position for our effect target. Once we use Enter on the number pad, we can see that the target has now moved, repositioning itself to the tracking data. You'll find more expressions and effects buried within this composition by selecting all of the layers using Command-A or on a PC, Control-A. Then typing E to open up the effects or EE to open up all of the expressions. We'll see how this very simple comp can be put together, and motion tracking can link all of the effects and layers together to create an effective look. Typing 0 on the number pad will create a quick RAM preview and show us how these all come together.